The presidency has said that President Muhammadu Buhari is not indifferent to the killings of policemen by soldiers in Taraba State. This was disclosed by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu. In a statement on Monday, Garba Shehu said Nigerians must be patient with Buhari, noting that the President will take action after the panel set up by the Chief of Defence, Chief Gabriel Olonishakin, has submitted its report following the investigation. Garba Shehu, who made the statement in response to the press questions, confirmed that a committee was set up during the National Security Council meeting to investigate the killings of 3 policemen and a civilian by soldiers in Taraba State. The President's aide stated that the insinuation and indifference or of indifference on the part of President Muhammadu Buhari is untenable. He said contrary to those mischievous insinuations, President Buhari had ordered the Chief of Defence Staff to set up an investigation committee with representatives from all over security organizations in the country, including the police force. Shehu urged Nigerians to show patience while the President awaits the report of the panel from the Chief of Defence Staff. And joining us in the studio is a security expert, Air Vice Marshal Femi Gbadebo, retired, to speak on this issue. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
So, of course, as a retired military person and someone who has his ears to the ground, you obviously know what has been happening with the killings of police officers by soldiers. The police also putting out statements and creating a hashtag on social media asking that justice be done. Most Nigerians are saying that they do not see the president moving or acting on this issue. But of course, you have heard what the presidential spokesperson has said. Where do you stand on all of this, and what do you think really had happened that day?
I think there was a breakdown in communications. Because you're on special operation, does not necessarily mean that you just walk into an area and move as can. The standard procedure, which I'm aware of, is that the police is in charge of an area until they find that they are unable to manage the situation. Then the army comes in. And once the army comes in, really the army have taken control. The police could still help, but the army is taking control. The army is not taking orders from the police. So if a special task force like that comes to operate in that area, even though they're undercover, it is polite and necessary for them to formally introduce themselves to the authorities in that area as to what they're doing. And especially when they're leaving with that. One thing I know that sometimes this kind of special operations, they just charge to checkpoints. They have a way of just getting to checkpoint and say, hey, we're police or operations or something like that. They're not dressed in uniform. They're not necessarily even looking like a regular policeman. They're carrying guns, sometimes not the standard guns that the real policemen are carrying. And so it is possible that they cross the first checkpoint without being identified properly. And by maybe second checkpoint, somebody radios ahead, and those at the checkpoint now decide to just challenge them. It's an unfortunate situation. And I hope that as we move on, that there'll be better coordination.
But there's also been cases where people have said, in fact, we have seen it play out. There's not been a very cordial relationship between the police force and the military. And I'm wondering why is that? Because you mentioned something about communication gap. If there was a cordiality of sorts, then information sharing of sorts, it might not be that you're giving some intel, but you're saying, this is what we're doing, so you know that we're around. So why has there been that, less cordial relationship?
Well, first of all, like I said, once the army moves in, it is assumed that the army have taken control. And we have areas where the police still want to maintain control. So you have 2 different forces trying to be in charge of an area. Now, when you're operating under covert orders, it is likely that there is information that some of those soldiers may have compromised themselves. And so giving information may get in the way of what they're doing. But what that does at the end of the day is that you have people moving covertly without the right information getting to everybody as to what they're doing. So it's a question of trust and a question of managing issues. And I'll tell you, it's always been a problem when you have the various the police, you have the army, you have the SSS, and so on. Now, even there's also mode of reporting where the soldiers at the checkpoint are reporting to their immediate commander in the area, who goes through a channel to get to the chief of army staff. Whereas this special forces are reporting directly to somebody in Abuja who is talking straight to the the head of the police. So you find that, everybody is a little bit guarded about passing information around. We've had areas where, even in the States, you'll find that the presidency has more information about what's happening in an area because maybe, let's say, the SSS or the special forces have passed their own information before even the chief of army staff has gotten information from the army on ground. So I think there has to be better coordination, really, to avoid these things.
And finally, before I let you go, on Mr. President's, we know in Nigeria we have a word, body language, concerning this. As a retired general in the army and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the #1 man when it comes to security, are there better ways that Mr. President would be showing that he's on top of this matter and dealing with it instead of just staying mute?
Well, we must give Mr. President credit for trying to be democratic. His body language right from the very first year has been that of letting those in charge to do their job. If there's a problem between the army and the police, they both have service heads and they should be able to work it out. So I don't think it is right for the president to come out every time to talk or to state something. That commissions have been set and the investigations will come out, and I think at the end of the day we'll be able to know exactly who's at fault. So let's give him credit for not always jumping into the fray and trying to resolve issues without having the facts in hand.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Marshal Femi Gbadebo. He is actually retired. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.